In a forest in Northern California, there is a tree. It is taller than the Statue of Liberty. It is older than the Roman Empire. And the United States government will not tell you where it is. Its name is Hyperion. It stands 380 feet, 9 inches above the forest floor, which makes it the single tallest living thing on planet Earth. The exact coordinates of Hyperion are not on any public map. The trail that once led to it has been erased. If you find it on your own, with no help, the National Park Service can fine you $5,000 and put you in jail for 6 months. This is the story of why. It begins with 2 men in 2006 walking through a part of Redwood National Park called the Lost Grove. Their names were Chris Atkins and Michael Taylor. They were not scientists. They were not park rangers. They were what people in the redwood community call big tree hunters. Amateur enthusiasts who spend their weekends searching the deepest, most untouched corners of the California coast looking for one thing: a record. For 2 decades, the record had stood at 367 feet, a tree called a stratosphere giant. But on August 25, 2006, Atkins and Taylor were walking through a remote canyon when one of them looked up. What they were looking at was not just a tall tree. It was a tree so tall that, when they measured it, the world's tallest living organism changed hands by more than 13 feet. They called it Hyperion, after the Greek titan of light. And then, almost immediately, they made a decision that has shaped the next 20 years of redwood conservation. They told almost no one. To understand why, you have to understand what happens to a tree when humans find out where it is. In 2000, a different giant sequoia in a different forest was open to the public. Within 5 years, the soil around its base had been compacted by foot traffic so badly that the tree's fine surface roots, which gather most of its water, began to die. Coast redwoods like Hyperion get nearly half of their water not from the ground, but from coastal fog absorbed directly through their needles. But the other half comes from the soil. And the soil at the base of a redwood is a delicate ecosystem of fungi, lichens, and tiny invertebrates that took thousands of years to develop. A few hundred pairs of hiking boots can flatten it in a single summer. This is what happened, slowly, to Hyperion. In the first few years after the discovery, the location stayed quiet. A few tree scientists were told. A National Geographic photographer was allowed in, under strict supervision, to take what is still the only widely published photograph. Then, somewhere around 2010, hikers found it on their own. By 2015, an unofficial trail had appeared. By 2020, that trail was a scar. People were leaving toilet paper. People were carving initials. One group set up a tent at the base of the tree, on top of a colony of red tree voles that had been living there for centuries. In 2022, the National Park Service did something unprecedented in American forest history. They closed Hyperion. Completely. Forever. The closure order is short and worth reading. It states that any person who travels off-trail to visit the tree, known as Hyperion, may be subject to fines of up to $5,000 and a sentence of up to 6 months in jail. It does not give the tree's location. It does not provide a map of the closure area. It simply names the tree and tells the public it is no longer theirs to see. This is a strange legal document. The United States is a country that takes pride in public lands. The whole idea of a national park is that the people own it, and the people can visit. To single out one tree and forbid it is, in a quiet way, a statement about a kind of damage that policy alone cannot repair. But the closure of Hyperion is also a clue to something larger. Because Hyperion is not the only secret tree. There's another tree called Helios that is 376 feet tall. Its location is also undisclosed. There's a third called Icarus at 371 feet. Undisclosed. There's a fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. All giants. All hidden. In fact, of the 10 tallest trees ever measured on Earth, the precise coordinates of 9 of them are now classified information held by a small group of researchers and the National Park Service. The only one of the top 10 whose location is public, a tree called the Mendocino tree, has had a fence built around its base. Because even with the fence, the soil compaction for visitors has measurably slowed its growth in the last decade. The deeper question is this: why are these trees so rare? There are about 2 million coast redwoods alive today. Of those, perhaps a few thousand are over 300 feet tall. Of those, only a handful approach 380. This is not because coast redwoods cannot grow taller. They can. The theoretical maximum height of a coast redwood, based on how high water can travel through xylem under tension, is somewhere around 425 feet. The reason none of them get there is that for the last 150 years, almost all of them have been cut down. By 1900, 95% of the old-growth coast redwood forest in California had been logged. The giants of Hyperion's generation grew up in a world where every neighbor that might have rivaled them had been felled before they were saplings. Hyperion is not the tallest tree that ever lived. Hyperion is the tallest tree that we did not kill. There is one more thing you should know about this tree. In 2006, a scientist named Stephen Sillett climbed Hyperion. He used arborist ropes to reach the canopy. He measured every branch, every needle, every gallon of biomass. At the very top of the tree, in the highest branches, the needles were short and stunted. They were not getting enough water. The xylem, the long straws of dead cells that carry water from the roots, simply could not pull it any higher. Hyperion, in other words, is reaching its limit. It will not grow much taller. It may even stop growing taller altogether. What is keeping the tallest trees on Earth tall is no longer their genes or their soil or even the climate. It is the absence of human beings. The tree is hidden. The trail is closed. The finds are real. And somewhere in a quiet canyon in California, the tallest living thing on the planet is doing what it has done for 1,600 years. Standing, waiting, drinking the fog, and growing by less than an inch each year into a sky that no human is ever supposed to see it touch.